You waited over 10 years for the new Space Marine game. And yet, your devotion to the Emperor remained unshaken. Blade untainted. Bloodlust unquenched. Virginity throbbing. The Emperor of Mankind demands your service once again. The cosmic dumpster fire you call your galaxy is being threatened by transdimensional illegal immigration and native fauna reclaiming their habitat. Duty calls for you to prove your faith by punching heresy so f***ing hard it passes through solid matter. Guide your blade into the hearts of enemies. Pierce through the veil of heretic sorcery, through the infuriating rambling of misguided gingers and jealous super twinks, and go on a hot and sweaty adventure with your gym bros in the totally platonic and heterosexual way.
Blow it! With pleasure!
This is Pegasus speaking. I never had much contact with Warhammer 40k. I only played some Dawn of War back in the day, and all I can remember is my music is a pillar upon which whole wars have been built. I also brushed against the outrage about Games Workshop introducing female custodies. Valid complaint, why would I want any women in my women repellent? So learning about the history and lore of 40,000 Warhammers was a peculiar experience, as it felt like it's challenging my legitimacy as a true gamer nerd, like I'm an attractive woman with big frame glasses posing with a controller on the internet. If I fail, I would be exiled into the NORMIE dome to watch sports and have a fulfilling social life, as my neurons shamefully undiverge themselves. But the thing about Warhammer is its fans. Sure, every hardcore fandom has its quirks, whether it's Star Trek, Dune, Star Wars or Warhammer 40k. It's a delightful safari of misfits, every single one bringing a unique flavor of Asperger's to the table. You know, the table they are not invited to. But with Warhammer 40k, you should never, under no circumstances, express any type of interest in their hobby. Do you want to be taken hostage to the conversation? Are you ready to receive massive unsolicited lore dumps all over you? What about being at the very sad end of the lore dump-fueled human centipede? You cannot stop it. It's a Pavlovian response. Maybe it's just my experience, but it's really hard to get them to shut the f*** about Warhammer. I don't know if it's their MK Ultra conditioning, a medical condition I shouldn't make fun of, or, you know, loneliness. So be nice, act interested. Locate all nearest escape routes, admire their collection of plastic soldiers and how many starving sea turtles in the Pacific it could feed. And by God, don't mention Funko Pops, because it's not cringe if my Funko Pops have guns. And after these delightful encounters and having the unwanted knowledge of Warhammer lore dripping out of you like you're a communal fleshlight near Catholic high school, you're left wondering whether you truly enjoy that franchise, or if you've just been saying so because everybody does, as you've been influenced by the modern media zeitgeist puppeteering you with its consumerist fingers inside your ass. Sometimes liking shit simply gives a sense of belonging, this warm, cozy feeling that no matter how embarrassing your hobbies may be, there is always a bigger neckbeard somewhere out there, the one to out-virgin us all. The full-spectrum warrior foretold by the legends. Nobody has ever met him, only smelled the faint silhouette of his fedora in the distance. And I guess the best type of autistic fervor is the one you can commodify and monetize, or weaponize if you live in the Warhammer universe. I guess that's how it feels to be a Space Marine. Very rarely we get an opportunity to play as religious zealots in service of a fascist theocracy. Hey gamers! Finally a gamer, you can be racist! And for that, I applaud Space Marine 2. Not for giving us the opportunity to be racist, we already have Call of Duty for that. But somehow managing to make the scenario of being a worthless drone in a totalitarian nightmarescape actually fun. Gaming headset on, knuckles cracked. Women and minorities disrespect. Yep, it's gamer time.
What is your life My honor is my life.
What is your fate?
My duty is my fate.
What is your pledge?
My pledge is eternal service.
Space Marine 2 is Gears of War about pest control, cosplaying as goth clergy, except with much less tactical cover mechanics, but with desperate flailing around like an epileptic tickled by 1000 ants. There's a harsh landing though. When you play the game, you're being thrust into its world without much explanation. So be ready to be suddenly surrounded by 10 feet tall, buff conservative dudes screaming about violence. However, if you're too vanilla for such bubble-bursting endeavors into the unknown, and want to know what in the Jesus fuck is happening, and why are there flying babies in cages, I'm here to help because I read the wiki once and even remembered some of it. Space Marines are mass-produced, feral child soldiers from Connie 2012 fed exclusively Monster energy drinks and creatine. This allowed them to fulfill every 5-year-old's dream and become walking tanks with mood swings. They also got injected with a gene of literal demigod which bestowed upon them the privilege of judging who's ripe for the afterlife. Pause the video to find out. This demigod being the Emperor of Mankind, a disabled zombie wizard ruling from the hospice, which he calls the Golden Throne. Keeping decrepit withered mummies as the most important decision makers? Now that's some science fiction if I've ever saw one. However, it's his mind that's doing all the legwork around here, as he's astrally projecting himself all over everyone's business, systematically squirting psychic juices of silent subjugation, just like your ex-girlfriend with a septum piercing who's stalking you in the spiritual realm because you blocked her on all socials. What do you think these magic rocks were for? My favorite magic rock is uranium because it gives you cancer. Good news though, nobody's complaining about the Emperor, because they're not allowed to. But there are foreign powers who challenge his claim to rule over, everything, usually called Xenos or Heretics, which are not slurs by the way, but they do come with a dash of Republican flavor. In order to protect the galaxy from foreign threats, the Emperor created a race of superhuman warriors known as Space Marines, and put them into these massive power armors, just skulls and thick metal, as if the Museum of Cambodian Genocide started selling cement mixers as a clothing brand. And thus, the fate of mankind finally rests on the wide shoulders of lobotomized bodybuilders. We play as Titus, a man with a generic face and an impeccable hairline, fresh out of serving his sentence from the Inquisition. His crime? Not dying like his friends in the previous game, so he was declared a heretic for being too competent at his job. Remember, Jesus was also crucified for being OP. Meanwhile, the jungle world of Kadaku was invaded by the Tyranids, a species which I would describe as oversized walking shrimps crossbred with very stupid chickens. God damn it, now I'm wondering what they taste like. The gameplay of eradicating them has a hypnotic rhythm to it, a trance of joyous xenocide, an aggressive ballet of meat and metal, which I like to call a lonely evening. But don't be fooled. They can easily overrun you and overwhelm you with sheer numbers, like a horde of Games Workshop accountants and IP lawyers preying on a broke teenager with his dad's 3D printer. I actually had these moments of panic where the situation suddenly spirals out of control and suddenly shit, I'm the one retreating like a bitch. Trying to break the chokehold of Tyranids surrounding me is like interrupting a rave for geese. But that's fine, because I've always wanted to punch an exotic animal in the face. See that army in the distance? It's not just a pretty skybox. You're going to kill it. There are also bigger enemies with ranged attacks and occasional bosses. My favorite is Ninja Cthulhu, who borrowed Predator's cloaking ability. I wish he appeared more often, pun intended, because honestly the enemy variety is pretty pathetic. Whether you're fighting Tyranids or, later on, those barbarian goat people led by Chaos Marines, it always boils down to two types of enemies. The first are the swarms of dog-shit cannon fodder. You can chop, stab and slice your way through them with ease, as long as you're not using that slow and ineffective warhammer. Ironic, right? The second type is the not-so-dogshit, slightly stronger cannon fodder with the occasional air support. The best way to handle them? Don't fight them at all. Let your squad mates take care of them, then swoop in to steal their glory with a super epic Doom Eternal style finisher. These finishers not only replenish your shields but also send a debilitating surge of dopamine through your adrenaline-fueled homicidal brain. It gives you a moment to catch your breath and praise the creator for inventing violence and for blessing you with the privilege of perpetuating it. In Minecraft, they never got boring. Oh goddammit! I already mentioned squad mates. You're always accompanied by two other Marines, who, just like Titus, also have the emotional range of a very loud bucket wheel excavator. Their casual conversation have this epic grandeur, as they keep talking about death, glory, loyalty, strength, faith, sacrifice, and basically all the 90s power metal lyrics you can imagine, spoken with a somewhat gothic flair of medieval powerlifters homeschooled by the Taliban. Yes, this game is multiplayer focused, which I disappointingly discovered after buying it at the full price at release. However, the AI squadmates are surprisingly not shit-brained. They do a lot of hard work for you, and even have a tint of sass, as Chiron revived me after teabagging me gently and kissing my forehead as he whispered "No homo" into my ear. Now let's talk about level design.
Brother, be careful!
The game drops you in these bombastic vistas, with flying cathedrals, massive battles and swarms of Xenos not yet compartmentalized into biodegradable chunks. Enjoy these views, cherish them, because most of the game are just repetitive dark hallways, industrial corridors, dungeons, and they all give me the vibe of a surprise colonoscopy performed on a very large pregnant spider. And there's always this goddamn keypad and a goddamn elevator, and this goes on for the entire campaign. And after some time, you start to see patterns. Epic vista. Hallway, keypad, elevator. Whoa, another epic scene. Wow, this is just amazing. Hallway, keypad, elevator. And most objectives aren't very interesting, they just require you to kill all the enemies before the game lets you through an arbitrary invisible wall. Like your mom locking you in your room until you clean it up. Except your room is a gladiatorial arena and your mom is a space wizard flying on a frisbee and summoning some Final Fantasy shit. Like, what the fuck is this? And as much as I don't mind such arcadey approach in something like Doom, it bothers me in Space Marine, and I can't fully explain why, but in a universe with lore so vast and deep it could implode billionaires, I expect more variety and a better integration of gameplay and story in my encounters. And that's the pattern throughout most of the game. What starts as an epic mission to protect the Empire quickly turns into a repetitive grind. It feels less like a holy crusade and more like exterminating cockroaches before a health inspector shows up. Or removing yellowish body pillows before female in room. There is so much filler and copy-paste content, you could write a PhD thesis and still have enough empty calories left over to make a new Ubisoft game. I remember a few missions that stood out as unique and creative. Like stopping the Xenos from jumping into a nuclear reactor or preventing them from climbing the walls, like toddlers racing to an unprotected electrical socket. There was also a mission where you ride a gigantic platform while Tyranids try to chew through the support chains, forcing you to make quick decisions about whether to deal with immediate threats or slow down the platform's destruction. And that time when you're surrounded by swarms of tiny insect rats carving a path with a flamethrower, and you have to develop your own efficiency model for that scenario, much like in A Plague Tale: Innocence, which, by the way, is a realistic depiction of modern-day Paris. Oh my god, there are so many rats in France they start getting jobs. Have you seen this shit? F***ing rats are making food! And as for Titus, he's a boring character. His troubled past leads nowhere, merely teasing the illusion of internal struggle. I did enjoy the constant bickering and the ideological conflict between him and Gadriel, but their dynamic was cut short so prematurely it outpaced aborted fetuses on their way to heaven. I do have some praise for Space Marine 2. The frenetic action, the grandiosity of its setting. But after 6 or 7 hours you start to realize you've seen everything it has to offer. It's a generic action game you've probably played before, just under a different name. Essentially, it's Warhammer porn that assumes you're already familiar with the franchise. If you're a filthy normie like me, completely new to 40k, it will not help you settle in. And honestly, I respect that. Not everything needs to be accessible to newcomers. Gatekeeping can serve a noble cause, protecting your hobby from the creeping hands of mainstream mediocrity. If you let every random smelly hobo into the Ritz-Carlton to draw their initials in shit on the walls, the place is no longer fancy. It just becomes a regular pub in England, but with fewer stab wounds. That's why Space Marine 2 won't turn you into a Warhammer fan if you're not already one. As for me, I'm just an outsider looking in, driven by curiosity. And the usual Henry Cavill maxing. I might be butthurt as I used to be more of a Fading Suns guy. I tend to pick losing sides just to scribble a fake smiley face on the sad mask of irrelevance. So, while I had some adequate enjoyment with Space Marine 2, it was ultimately marred by tedious repetition and a bare-bones plot that felt more like an afterthought. It's competent but shallow, and it overstays its welcome like a glass container in an untrained sphincter. Just like this video.